Anthony Castrovince, our next guest on the Fan Hotline. He's funny. I've seen him in social settings. But right now,
he's even funnier on X.
He is. He's very good. You know what? You're too highbrow for many, Anthony, I have to say. From MLB.com, MLB Network, sometimes it's over the heads of some of these people that follow you. Because
I got to take it down a notch. I really do.
You got to appeal to the masses.
I was just calling in for the Nate Bargatze tickets. Am I the 10th caller?
You had to enter the code word on the website.
Okay.
All right, Anthony.
When I get off.
Anthony, you are covering a team that has already made history. You know, I kind of joked at the start of the show. I said, hey, they give out a World Series every year. There's really nothing that special about a World Series. But coming back from 15.5 down, that is history. They are the sole team to pull it off, and I think they might have the worst or one of the worst batting averages ever to make the postseason. Again, they give out the World Series every year. What's the big deal? They've already accomplished something pretty damn big. The question is, can they keep this going? Can they do this for another week at least, Anthony?
You know, why not? I think, first of all, hang a banner at Progressive Field with a paragraph-long explanation of what they just accomplished, because it is completely absurd. And I like, for our purposes as journalists, as writers, I'm thinking about future journalists, like 100 years from now, who might have to explain when some team comes back from 16 back. They'll be able to say that the 2025 Cleveland Guardians came back from 15.5 back, and that was the greatest comeback ever. And there's no asterisk like attached to it with a tiebreaker, or they came back to tie the division, but then lost the division, but still made the playoffs as the third wild card seed. None of that stuff. No, they came back from 15.5 back and won the division by a game. So you got to like the nice stamp of approval there at the end. As far as whether they can keep it going, I mean, October is its own animal. We know that, and it seems like there's so many times where a team has all the momentum going into October, or a team is in a rut going into October, and everything flips because it's such a different environment. Your pitching staff is whittled down to its essence. It's more off days, so it's a different beast. But man, this team's got a lot of belief in itself right now, and it's fun to watch.
So what you're saying is the Tigers blew a 15.5 game lead as our new Warriors blew a 3-1 lead.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the way it has to be in Cleveland. Like, for a Cleveland team to win a championship, something absurd has to happen. Like, all statistical odds have to be tossed aside, and that's what happened with the Cavaliers in 2016, and that's what happened with the Guardians in 2025.
Should the Guardians be at all concerned about Skubal in Game 1, considering their recent history against him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this wild card series is... we had it in the COVID year in 2020, but then, for all intents and purposes, we've had it since 2022 as a full-time postseason round. There's been 12 of them. 10 of the 12 have been wrapped up in the minimum of 2 games. Game 1 is everything. It really is. That probably goes without saying. It's a best of 3, and you can come back from 0-1, but we just haven't seen that really. So to have Tarik Skubal for the Tigers is a huge advantage for them. I don't, what's happened in the last couple of weeks. The Guardians beat him twice. They beat him twice by scoring 2 earned runs against him total in those 2 starts. We saw the wacky inning, last week where they were able to hang 3 on him, a couple unearned in that crazy inning where they, don't hit the ball out of the infield. And that's their style. But, man, I mean, to count on that happening again is difficult. It's just, you can't overstate the difficulty of it. He's a premier pitcher at his absolute peak. And, he knows this team well. They know him well. But, the Tigers have the upper hand just because of that factor. There's a lot of reasons why the Guardians have the upper hand in the series in terms of their style of play. They don't strike out a lot like the Tigers do. They play a clean game, and I think that was the difference in these last couple series against the Tigers. The Tigers did not play a clean game. And, so that can make a huge difference in the postseason. But if you're just like, looking at this rationally and calmly and objectively, you'd have to say the Tigers have the huge edge just because they have Tarik Skubal on the mound in Game 1.
Anthony Castrovince joined us on the hotline. Help size up the pitching situation, the rotation for us, and also how the bullpen will be impacted by what they do with the rotation.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure they'll, tell us for sure today, but I would suspect, Gavin Williams Game 1, Tanner Bybee Game 2, and then, you're choosing between Joey Cantillo and Slade Ciccone for Game 3. Cantillo's interesting because, I mean, he's on a tear right now, but he's also like, a guy that we know they can turn to in a bullpen role too. So that would be interesting. But, it's all about games 1 and 2. And those are their dudes, Bybee and Williams right now. And, as far as how that impacts the bullpen runs pretty deep. It's interesting to see the evolution of that group as this year has gone along. Obviously, it was historically great last year, and then kind of ran out of gas in October. You don't feel like I was worried about the bullpen going into postseason last year, just because they had been used so much. He had four guys with 70+ appearances. You don't have that this year. It's more about a group that's come together late in the year in the face of great adversity and losing their closer. And you had a great closer to step right in Cade Smith, but that elevates everybody else. And how's that going to look? Well, we've seen how it looks. The Sobrowskis of the world. Hunter Gaddis is pitching really well right now. So you don't have that feel of just like, all right, how long can they keep doing this? Do they have anything left in the tank? It's not that. It's more like they got a bunch of options back there, and Vogt and company are really good about mixing and matching and putting guys in good spots. And so I don't really worry about the bullpen.
Give me the Guardian not named Jose Ramirez or Stephen Kwan, who you think needs to be the X factor in this series.
I think it's Brian Rocchio, and I'm not just saying that because he hit that home run yesterday. I would have said that, prior to that swing, just because, he's played so much better since he came up from the minors. He's solidified the second base spot for them, which was a must. And this guy's got a really good heartbeat. You think about that game a couple weeks ago. This is defensively, but that game a couple weeks ago against Chicago was a Sunday afternoon, and they're in that moment where every win, they need every win desperately at that moment, and he makes a great defensive play. And it's one of the best defensive plays I've seen to end a game. So this guy's got a really good heartbeat for the big moments. He's ticked it up offensively. Last year in the postseason, he was terrific in the division series against the Tigers. So if they get that guy, towards the bottom of the order, it flips the order on its head, and then you're setting up opportunities for Kwan and Jose and whatnot. So, I think he's a huge X factor for them.
Well, you mentioned Kwan, and obviously we know just how incredible he is in the field, and the throws have just been awesome all year. So it's actually really fun to watch that guy, field his position. Offensively, how big of a series does he need to have? Is there any pressure on Kwan to get things going, just knowing their lineup is not really going to stack up against any of these other lineups?
There's always tremendous pressure on Stephen Kwan in this lineup, right? Because, there's not a lot coming behind him. We know that. But when you generate traffic, you can compel your opponent into mistakes like we saw against the Tigers. They can create havoc. On the base pass, they put the ball in play, and sometimes that's all it takes. But that all starts with Stephen Kwan at the top of the order. It's kind of like an obvious thing to say. They have two all-star caliber hitters in their lineup, and he's one of them, so he's important. But just because of the complexion of the lineup overall, your leadoff man is vital. And I agree with you. Defensively, like there was a ball off the top of the wall yesterday, for a double that. Just watching him play the angles perfectly and, almost getting the runner at second base with his arm. He's really fun to watch in left field, even on a double.
What's gotten into Guardian catchers lately? Austin Hedges and Bo Naylor are hitting baseballs.
Yeah, something about Bo Naylor, takes time to settle in, I guess, but September brings out the best in him. October, perhaps, too. We saw some big hits from him last October, and I really thought, as did many, going into the year, I thought that, something had clicked for him, and we'd see that, offensive ceiling that's been forecast for him for a long time. It didn't happen that way, but all that people remember is how you finish, and people are going to remember what he did in this month of September to really elevate this offense to a level it had not reached in the previous 5 months. And so that's great to see. And then Hedges, of course, I'll be curious to see. Last year was interesting in the postseason where, you had Naylor and then you had Hedges coming in for defensive purposes, and then they flipped that, to bring Naylor's bat off the bench. I think in a postseason environment, I think it really functions better that way, to be honest with you. So that might be a method to go about it, here in this series. We'll see.
Obviously, there was so much made of the sixth inning last week and David Fry and what happened after the game. With the teams kind of coming together in a bizarre way, and now you're playing them again. How much could that play into that matchup? Because we're sitting here last week saying, man, I want to hate Skubal. I want to hate him. And then it seemed like he was a really good guy. And now, we need that whole stadium to be loud and obnoxious, with him, and to try to get that edge that we need against a really good pitcher.
I know. I'm sorry to break it to everybody, but even prior to the David Fry situation, Tarik Skubal really is a good dude. Like, he has a really good reputation in baseball. He's great in the community. Like, he's someone you root for if you don't, if you don't have money or pride on the line. Like, he's a good one, man, and he's obviously a great pitcher. And that was that was fascinating, right? I mean, these guys are fighting tooth and nail. This guy just lost an absolute crusher. Like I said, he gives up one earned run and takes the loss in a must-win game, and he's got to be hurting from that, but you could see him hurting for another person instead, from the moment it happened. Like, you could see it on his face, and he really felt concerned for David Fry in that moment, and rides over with Stephen Vogt. So, yeah, how do you dislike a guy like that? And so, yeah, they always say familiarity breeds contempt, but I don't feel contempt in this series between these two teams. I just feel respect, they don't have many of those benches clearing moments, so it's more about just two different teams, but two teams who have great respect for the battle they just endured, and here we go again.
And Anthony, I have great respect for you, and I can't wait to be linking up again, because I feel like this can't end now. This can't end this week. We've got to keep it going throughout the weekend. And baseball, it's so it's unfortunate just how quickly the playoffs wrap up. Like, so many teams are just going to be out of it by Wednesday.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not us.
I kind of liked the one-game wild card because of the pure drama of it, but yeah, it goes fast, and this best of three goes really fast too. And like I said, usually it's wrapped up in two. So hopefully this one, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say that here in Cleveland, but I like when they go the distance. So hopefully a couple of these go the distance. Maybe not Cleveland, Detroit, but let's get at least one or two of them.
All right, Ant, MLB.com, at Castrovince on social media. We'll talk to you again.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
All right, there he is. And he's not sugarcoating it. To beat Skubal a third time, not going to be easy.